Okay, guys, welcome back to another episode of Rotten Reviews. On this episode, I take a look at the 2009 film The Box with Cameron Diaz and James Marsden. It has a 44% on the tomato meter and a 24%, a big 24% on the audience score. Is that rotten? Well, yes, it is rotten, and I would agree it is completely rotten. This movie to me was a very big disappointment. I was expecting it to be something better than a Twilight Zone episode stretched to a 2-hour run length, which is what this is. They took something that had been done in the Twilight Zone, and it has been done elsewhere as well. It has been done in short story and novel form as well, and they padded out something that was very simple in concept, and they made it into a just about a 2-hour movie. And it comes across that way. It comes across as very stretched out, boring, and ultimately confusing. You know where this is going, and when it gets there, you're just left with a lot of elements that were never explained in the story, a lot of things that you kind of get the feeling they were just put in there to stretch this into a 2-hour movie. This has, again, Cameron Diaz. She plays a woman named Norma, and James Marsden. He plays a man named Arthur. They are husband and wife. The husband at least is working for NASA. It's not explained why this movie is set in 1976, but it is. You think there's a reason for that when you go into this thing, and there's no reason why you would set this story in 1976. It's not pertinent to anything at NASA or anything else that's happening in the story. It's kind of just an odd decision to put it there. Again, I don't know, maybe this is also to get rid of the element of cell phone technology. Some stories I've noticed, particularly on TV programs, for the traditional stories that you want to tell in episodic format, sometimes cell phone technology is kind of a hindrance to that. It requires a bit more work on the team of writers or the writer to write around the fact that cell phones destroy a lot of the old classic plot devices and workings that we are used to. Now, in a movie, you don't expect that, but who knows? Maybe the decision to set this in 1976 was just so that we wouldn't have to deal with cell phones ruining something. I don't know. I'm not sure on that because I don't think there's anything in this film that would have been ruined with cell phones, so I don't know. It's a mystery to me why we're in 1976, but we are. Now, this is a couple that's at home, and they have issues going on, but then Frank Langella's character shows up, and his name, I guess, is Arlington, and he's revealed later to have been a former employee of NASA. It's weird, and it sounds weird when I describe it, and it doesn't really get better when you watch the movie. This character shows up, Frank Langella's character shows up, and his face is half gone. It's very weird to look at. He almost looks like an alien because half of his face is just vanished, like it's been, eaten away by acid or dissolved away, and yet he's still talking and walking around like normal with half his face gone. But okay, anyway, he shows up and offers this couple a chance to push the button on this mysterious box, in which if they push the button, if they decide to just push this simple, almost like a, Office Max easy button, if they decide to push this thing, they will just get $1 million delivered to them. But in return, they have to know that when they push this button, some random person out there somewhere is going to die. Or actually, it's not a random person. It is somebody they don't know will die when they push the button, but they'll get $1 million. Now, later in the movie, it's kind of revealed that what happens is, as other people are given the same offer, the button kills the previous person that took the offer and pushed the button. Okay, fine. What this has to do with NASA, I don't know, but it's to be revealed in the movie that this whole scheme is, a way that some alien race is testing humans to see if they're worthy for what, I don't know, but to judge humanity by whether or not people will choose to push this button for $1 million. So there's an alien plot involved in this, and I guess that was some reason why these characters have to work for NASA, but really the alien plot doesn't really tie into that a whole lot. It's just very strange, and it seemed to me like just an attempt by somebody to draw out what should have been just a Twilight Zone episode into a big 2-hour movie, and it's very confusing. And I'm confusing myself just trying to explain this. So anyway, 24% audience score, and we're going to take a look at why. We have a review from November 17th of 2019, making it a very recent review, certainly in the last month. 2.5 stars. Richard Kelly has been an interesting filmmaker who has sadly vanished after this film. Critically, Kelly has struggled since Donnie Darko, and it's a shame. He has unique storytelling style, and the box failures to wrap up the film is an example of what can go wrong with his films. Was it clashing with producers? Who knows? But something was clearly missing here. Diaz feels like a miscast and the incorrect choice for the lead. She obviously helped with the financing of this film. The film is trippy enough. Yeah, this is a weird film. It's supposed to be weird, but it just never gets better. It just confuses you with all its weirdness. Okay, so I learned something new. This director, he made Donnie Darko. Well, I have to admit I haven't seen Donnie Darko. One of these days I'll get around to it, but it just doesn't, the marketing for it just never appealed to me, even though I have seen it referenced for many years of how it's a fantastic masterpiece of what it is. I just haven't seen it, so I'll take this reviewer's word for it that he did Donnie Darko. I'll say that, 2.5 stars. No, I'll give this like 1.5 star. It's not so bad that it offends me, but it doesn't really add up to anything for me. I don't get the point in it. So I'm going to say I believe this deserves a 1.5 star, not 2.5 stars. And also, I have to say that there are problems. I don't know about miscasting, but there are problems with Cameron Diaz and James Marsden in that you have to chalk it up to bad acting because they have accents. They have Southern accents. Now, they're living in Virginia. Okay, so... But as employees of NASA, they could be from anywhere. They could have grown up in California and moved to Virginia. Who knows? But in any case, for whatever reason, both of them have like an accent. I don't know if it's a Virginian accent, but it's a slight Southern accent. Now, the bad acting comes in when both of them at different parts and different scenes in the movie just kind of lose or forget this accent at certain times and then go back to the accent later. That's bad acting. It's sloppy. It's dumb. It should have been fixed with reshoots. And it's just bad acting that they didn't care to fix. It's not something, it's not something that adds anything to the film. It just pulls you out of the believability of the whole thing. It's bad acting. So let's move down here to another review. 3.5 stars. The box is creepy, disturbing, and some significant depth. It will keep you guessing through some of the twists and turns feel forced. If you're a sucker for The Twilight Zone or Black Mirror, the box will be right up your alley. If not, you may find it a bit awkward, cheesy at times, and it may leave you unsatisfied. Yeah, I would say The Twilight Zone did this type of story better. This is just drawn out, and it's got a lot of stuff it introduces that just further complicates it and isn't resolved at the end. And you kind of know where it's going before it gets to where it's going, but it puts a lot of stuff in there that doesn't help its case any. You're not left with any kind of overall theme to this, like what was the point? Do you take away a message from this? No, you don't. That's why it deserves to be rotten. A lot of weirdness. 1 star, a random mess that never comes together and is inexplicably obtuse. I'll largely agree with that. It comes together, but too much of it's like left on the side and not explained. So enough comes together that you got the point of it, but you're wondering why they threw in all this other stuff. Just, well, I guess to pad the running time is the answer. 2 stars. The movie is making noise in the background while I knit myself a beanie. The premise intrigued me. However, it seems miscast and the horrible attempt at an accent by Cameron Diaz, and the movie score is making what could be a pretty good drama more of a comedy. I don't get that. Nothing in here made me laugh out loud. It wasn't like so bad that it's good. It's not one of those movies that you could take this in a comedy way and find it humorous and entertaining. It's just boring and weird. It's too weird and dark at times to be comedic in any fashion. 1 star. From the get-go, the accent seemed awkward and forced. partly due to the script, but the acting did not aid. They took the common Southern accent and turned it up 5,000%. The music was cheesy, hampering the potential of the movie. The film started off with a simple question and became something extremely abstract and weird. The movie raises a billion questions about its plot and about what you just watched. Maybe I'm not intelligent enough to understand, but I'd like to err on the side that this movie was just, and I'll continue for him, just bad, piss poor. Yeah, 1 star. I give it 1.5 stars because it was just weird enough to keep me watching. The Southern accent, yeah, I don't know the purpose of that. It strikes me a lot like the decision to put this in 1976. You would think there's a reason for that, but there isn't. It also strikes me like the decision to have these employees work for NASA and have Frank Langella's character be a former employee of NASA that's possessed by an alien intelligence. Why? What does it have to do with anything? Is there a purpose for this? It doesn't seem to serve any purpose. And again, the Southern accent, it doesn't seem to serve any purpose, even if it was a perfect accent and they didn't screw it up and they didn't drop out of their accent at times that I noticed. If their accent had been perfect, I still wouldn't have understood the decision to put it there since they are living in Virginia. They're employees of the federal government. I'm sorry, but lots of employees of the federal government, even working in Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, they don't have Southern accents. Why would they? They come from all over the U.S. It doesn't make sense. 0.5 star. Don't waste your time. Okay. Yeah, I'll largely agree. If you've seen the trailer, if you've watched the first 10 minutes of this, that's all there is. Like, it doesn't get any better after that. It, like, takes something that it's, that mystery that draws you in, and it just disappoints after that. 5 stars. Deserves much better than acclaim. Some people can't handle an original idea with a plot that makes you really think about life, the afterlife, and all the unknowns in between. A movie that challenges your mind and keeps you guessing all along is the definition of a creative and deserving film. For me, this film outshines Donnie Darko and not vice versa. Bravo, Mr. Kelly, for going against the grain and making an artistic, creative piece of art, one that is rarely ever seen anymore. Well, this is like a fan of the director, apparently, and I guess the director, maybe he was going for that, trying to do another cult classic, Donnie Darko. Again, I have to admit I haven't seen Donnie Darko, but I recognize that it's like a cult classic to people. And one day I will see it, and maybe this was an attempt by the director to recreate that type of cult classic movie. It completely failed. I can 100% tell you that because the movie just past the first 10 minutes didn't go anywhere for me. I sat through it just because it was weird. That's not exactly the makings of a cult classic there. 3.5 stars. I thought this film was provocative and touching. I think Cameron Diaz was excellent as well as the main and supporting cast. It was plausible and well written. It deserves our attention. Completely disagree. I recommend not watching this. Don't waste your time. 3.5 stars again. Good movie, very interesting plot that other reviewers seem to be having trouble following for some reason. No, I didn't have any trouble following the plot or where it ended up. I just don't get how it got there and why we needed all that weird stuff put in there to get there. And I didn't get the message. There was no message. There wasn't anything that I could take away as any kind of subtle message even. It was just pointless. 4 stars. Loved this movie. It was a bit bizarre, but loved the vibe. Well, it had a weird vibe. That's, again, that's what kept me watching, but I got nothing out of that. 0.5 star. Was a lot more convoluted than necessary. Yes, I completely agree. A lot of weird things were put together in there. They teased you in a way like, this is going to mean something, and then it never does, and that's the definition of convoluted. It's just wasting your time. 0.5 star. What a piece of nonsensical, stupid crap. 1.5 stars. First 45 minutes were solid, then the movie became extremely unrealistic, too taboo for me. Yeah, I'll say there's a scene, it's really a weird scene where there's almost like characters falling into and out of portals, like water-like portals, almost kind of stolen in a way from Stargate. It's again introducing an alien-type technology. I don't know why it's there, what it's supposed to do, or what the purpose of it is. It's just to be weird and dark and kind of like give you a weird vibe, and it does that, but it doesn't add up to anything. It's just more weird stuff put into the movie. Yeah, 1.5 stars. Yeah, Unrealistic, I read that one. Too taboo, I'm not sure what they mean by taboo. Maybe somebody else will clarify on that. I didn't get anything in this that was taboo. 5 stars. I loved this movie and I don't understand all the bad reviews. The character Arlington Stewart, Frank Langella, is excellent and very unique. The movie was very imaginative, which is why I liked it. It also covers some important themes: greed, survival, and love. There are many elements to the story that are left unsaid, but they are implied. Maybe that is why the scores are so low. Maybe the watchers couldn't keep track of what was happening. Completely disagree that people just couldn't keep track of what is happening. The plot's not that complicated where it goes. I see that maybe this was some weird attempt at to suggest that women have some problem. Like, for example, this reviewer says greed, survival, and love. Well, it is the woman that's shown in this movie to always be the character of the husband and wife that pushes the button, that wants the $1,000,000. For some reason, every time Frank Langella's Alien offers a couple this choice, it's always the woman that pushes the button. Isn't that kind of a little odd? Like, is the director trying to say that women are the ones that, they're greedy enough to kill somebody for the $1,000,000? Is this like some, I've heard somebody say that this is some weird Adam and Eve type thing where Eve is the one that always tries to taste the poisonous fruit. I think that's stretching a lot. If there was such an allegory to be found here, it should be a little more obvious. There's too much other weird stuff in here to just grab at that as some deeper meaning to this film. I don't think this is a Adam and Eve story type meaning. I think that's stretching too far. Greed, survival, and love. Yeah, you've got a story where there's, there are characters that have, chronically or terminally ill members of their family that somehow this movie could save. You can somehow save them if you push the button and get the $1,000,000. That's not a direct, it's also reaching too much for that too. It's more, yes, greed, yes. When you're offering somebody $1,000,000, it kind of overrides everything else in the plot. If you wanted to make this about saving terminally ill family members or something, or sacrifice in that regard, you have to do it in a way that doesn't involve a briefcase with $1,000,000 in it, because I understand the greed part, but the other parts, the survival and the love, doesn't work here. Greed, perhaps. 5 stars. No, I'm sorry. This is 1.5 stars. 2.5 stars. What do I make of the box? Well, this is a weird movie, and after leaving the theater, I couldn't make much sense of it. Made by the same guy who helmed Donnie Darko, the box is about a couple who receive a mysterious person one day who gives them a box and a proposition. The acting by James Marsden and Cameron Diaz is serviceable, and some sequences are pretty good, but then the plot needs to make sense. Looking around, most reviews are similar in nature, a bit of a head scratcher. Yeah, it's like, I don't understand what the purpose of this thing was. I understood where it ended up. I understood that the alien civilization wanted to test human beings, but I didn't understand why Frank Langella needed to have half his face removed, other than it's a weird visual aesthetic made for a trailer. It served no purpose. It just made the plot more convoluted. A lot of other stuff too. It just made the plot more convoluted. It didn't add up to anything. It's almost like it was just made to be weird enough to get people to tell people it was so weird that they had to go to the theater and see it to find out how weird it was. But it failed. It failed because this financially failed. It didn't work, if that's what the intention was. 4.5 stars. Everybody loves to hate Richard Kelly. I get it. He doesn't conform to what subsidized mold 95% of the population wants to see. This is why I love his films. Although he does strange things with storyline, he still manages to make his dreams come to life. And nightmares. The box is no exception. I chalk it up to people misunderstanding his vision with jaded expectations, when that is a fatal flaw in the viewer and not the creator. I'm sure you were expecting a nice little sci-fi romp with no payoff. I'm sorry, but this reviewer's out to lunch. He's saying it's the fault of the audience that this movie did badly, that this director is a visionary genius, and that it's just because people like me and the bulk of people out there that panned this movie, we're the ones that are flawed, and we just don't understand what a genius he is. This sounds like something written by the director or his wife, because I'm sorry, it's just ridiculous. The argument is ridiculous. The only correct judge of a work of art is the audience that that work of art is made for, or the audience that is looking at that work of art by whatever circumstance, not the person that made the work of art. So I disagree. 1.5 stars. Would make a pretty good episode of Dark Mirror, but not an almost 2-hour movie. Marsden's acting is passable, but Diaz came off wooden a great deal of the time. Maybe drama's not for her because she's been fine in her comedies. Langella is probably the most fun to watch as the ominous deliverer of the box. He's amply creepy. When I saw the director was the same guy who directed Donnie Darko, I had higher expectations, but then Darko is a rough act to follow. I suggest watching Darko instead. I'll probably agree with that because nobody's ever told me that, well, nobody has told me with proper reason that Donnie Darko is no good, that's actually watched it. So not having watched it, I have to say that it probably is a lot better than this film. 2.5 stars. This is a weird movie, and after leaving the theater, I couldn't make much sense of it. Yeah, okay, that's a repeat, but it bears repeating on that part, I guess. We're in April of 2018 on this review. 0.5 star, ridiculous waste of time. I'll largely agree. March of 2018, 2 stars. An interesting premise ruined by a silly sci-fi subplot. Yeah, it's like it starts out great, and then when it gets to the aliens testing humans part, and the former employee of NASA being this weird character with his face missing, yeah, it just doesn't go anywhere with that. It's like you're wondering why. Why did it have to do this? Because it doesn't give us anything. There's no payoff to learning all this convoluted stuff. Weird is the word. We're in December of 2017 on this review. 0.5 star, junk, 100% junk. 2 stars. This is the typical interesting concept that goes off the wall film that was really disappointing. The concept was so interesting but completely lost me when it started going into the alien realm. Not much was explained and it slowly fell apart as it went on. I agree 100% with that. Yes, the more it went on, the more it didn't go anyplace. It just gave you more and more stuff to confuse you. 5 stars. Don't understand the low ratings. I guess everyone who hated it had no brains and needed the story spelled out in detail to enjoy it and get it. Keep watching your generic action movie with a lot of violence that we've seen time and time again. It's one of the most original stories of that decade, and Kelly deserves brownie points for originality. It really makes you think about the seen and unseen world around you. The writing, acting, and directing was fantastic. I don't know what movie this person was watching, but they're out to lunch. No one watching the trailer to this is expecting any kind of action movie. They were expecting a sci-fi. They're expecting actually some kind of Twilight Zone-like thing. That's what the trailer promised. That's not where this goes. It goes into a whole lot of stuff that adds up to a very cliched ending, but it has a lot of weird stuff that doesn't need to be there to get there. Wow, and wow, you're out to lunch. 4 stars, a good movie by Richard Kelly, a Twilight Zone version from the 50s. Yeah, Twilight Zone version from the 50s. It actually was a Twilight Zone version. I don't know if it was from the original series of the Twilight Zone or actually the newer Twilight Zone series from the 80s. I think it was actually done in that one. In any case, it's like that, except add another hour and 30 minutes runtime and throw everything in there that's weird just to keep you watching. Pointless. 0.5 star. I thought I was the only one who didn't like this movie. Well, trust me, you're not. 1.5 stars. This movie started out good but quickly went downhill. Yes. 1.5 stars. What a complete and utter load of nonsense. Yes. 2.5 stars. How could such a promising film end up so complicated? What started off as a simple premise of a couple having to choose to push the button or not ended up so jumbled. If they opted to press it, then they would be $1 million richer. But with the fact that someone somewhere will have died as a result of their decision, it makes the predicament all that harder. I had assumed that once they pressed it, the next couple who are in receipt of the box would ultimately make a decision that could end up, well, you know what? Basically, that's what happens. If you push the button, yes, you get them $1 million, but then the next person that pushes the button ends up killing you. So it's kind of pointless to push the button, isn't it? But that's not the worst part of this film. That could have been outstanding. That could have worked. But no, this gets a whole lot messier than just that. 3 stars. I thought it was a well-crafted science experiment of a movie. It leads much to your imagination and spurs feelings of dread and suspicion over the choices we make. Who is pulling the strings? Is there a giant scoreboard in life keeping track of our decisions, good and bad? For this reason, I love this movie and have watched it many times since. It's a guilty pleasure movie for me. Wow, you're getting something out of it that I didn't. But Godspeed to you for that. If you're getting a lot out of this, I hope you do get it on Blu-ray and you enjoy. But for the rest of us, I don't recommend. 4 stars, July of 2017. Interesting plot and movie, and one that keeps you not sure what is going to happen or how it will end. But it also keeps you interested in it, and it is a good movie. A great, clean sci-fi thriller, and it's not a reusable plot that you have seen before, like in so many other movies. I disagree. It's just a whole lot of weirdness. But actually, no, we've seen this concept done in a lot of other movies. Aliens come to the Earth. Doesn't matter how or why. They test humans, and they will judge humans as either being worthy or not for some greater purpose, or to wipe us out, or whatever they're judging us. But the aliens have come to judge us. And they are our judges. And this is not something that's unique. This has been done many, 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 many times before in TV form, in movie form, in book form, in Broadway play form. The only thing that's different about this is that it's just weird. It's very weird. And I'm sorry, but otherwise there's nothing new here. 4.5 stars. A little bit confusing, but very good movie. Imaginative, thrilling, and original. It's not thrilling. It's weird. It's not just a little bit confusing. It's a little bit confusing at the beginning, which is okay. That's what it wanted to do. That's what I wanted it to be. But after it gets more complicated from the beginning, the confusing is a whole lot more confusing, and it's just like it doesn't end up paying out in any way. There's no resolution to all this confusingness. 0.5 star. We're in July of 2017. This movie contradicts itself and does not explain all the elements of the film. Yes, exactly. They throw a lot of stuff in, and you're left wondering why. Why was it even there? 5 stars. This is a great existential film that is not for the big box sci-fi fans who like the big FX and minimal plot. This film is not what it seems, and for that I thank the artists who made it. It was beautifully edited in such a way that forces the viewer to look at it as more than what it seems. For anyone who loves Jean-Paul Sartre, you'll love the eccentricity, detail, intrigue, and suspense. It's far more than just a box. It's a metaphor for whatever you want it to be. Okay, so if you just put a mysterious box in any movie, then the movie is a work of art because, you know, it's whatever you want it to be. I disagree. 1 star, the cinema equivalent of trash. 0.5 star, good story, good idea for a story made into possibly the worst movie I've ever seen. Terrible from start to finish. What was The Santa all about? Yeah, The Santa, just one more of a numerous amount of stuff thrown into the movie that, you know, it teases you with the idea that it's going to mean something or go someplace, but it never does, and you're left wondering at the end, wait a minute, what is all that stuff in there for? 0.5 star, good idea for a story made into possibly the worst movie I've ever seen. Yeah, okay. 1.5 stars, very boring movie. I liked the ending sequence, though. Okay, 1 star, not a good movie to watch. 2 stars, nothing more frustrating than having all the components to a structure, a thought-provoking, chilling film, and then blowing your chance so spectacularly. Being let down not only by its less than middle tier leads, but also plagued by erratic direction, abhorrent editing, chaotic writing, and a myriad of other technical issues. The box only benefits from 2 points: Frank Langella's ever-charming performance, and the potential conversation, the age-old party question of this particular what would I do if. Yeah, I'll largely agree with that. This thing goes nowhere. I don't recommend. 0.5 star. What is this about? Horrible. Yeah, a lot of people probably, if they went into the theater and they paid money to see this, they're probably, when the lights come on so they can walk out over the spilled buckets of popcorn at their feet, they're going to be wondering, what did I pay to see? What was this bullshit? Yeah. 1 star, excruciating tedium. Yeah, it's 2 hours. It's 2 hours of like Is this ever going to add up to anything? And it never does. Half a star, no, don't bother, you're not missing a thing. I agree. 1 star, mimicking the style of Stanley Kubrick and Alfred Hitchcock, The Box is a needlessly complex and poorly acted mess with cheap thrills and a lack of understanding of its source material. Yeah, that's a lot of words to say yeah. 3 stars, following 2006's Southland Tales, writer-director Richard Kelly goes closer to his roots. His 2001 directorial debut and cult classic Donnie Darko, with The Box, a fellow mind-bending sci-fi drama whose ambition doesn't always pay off in a positive manner, but is undeniably and perhaps strangely engaging nonetheless. Well, it's certainly weird, okay? Continuing. The film raises a lot of fascinating philosophical concepts, and while they pretty much get lost in the shuffle during the second act, the first and third really ask the questions. That's a lot of words there, this reviewer's spewing out to say that this isn't a very good movie, and yet he gives it 3 stars, and I say, wow, knock that down to 1.5 stars. 1.5 stars, October of 2016, poor acting and forced story. 2.5 stars, confusionary and difficult to understand, not in a good way. The Box falls in the category of sci-fi movies where the features are absurd, badly shooted, and hard to accept. Apart from this, a very good performance from Cameron Diaz has to be acknowledged. All in all, an almost decent mystery and suspense sci-fi movie. Almost decent? No. It's not really, only the first 10 minutes are really a mystery, and then, it just derails into a mess. Again, it starts off so great. Frank Langella at that kitchen table with his box and the weird face. It had so much, but if you had just stuck like a 13, 14-year-old junior high schooler in there to finish the story off as a short story, it would have been fine. But this is just an excuse to like have a sore butt in a movie theater for 2 hours. 3.5 stars, an entertaining and engaging B science fiction film. No, it's not. 1.5 star, confusing and too boring to try and get through it. Yes. 2.5 stars, confusionary and difficult to understand, not in a good way. Yes, we heard that before. 4 stars, had a okay story and ending. Sorry, it didn't. 4 stars, a hugely interesting expansion on a social experiment that tests moral boundaries. Would you push the button for $1 million? Someone you do not know who is in no way related to you dies as a consequence. How desperate can people be for a life-changing sum that said sum becomes the amount that changes someone else's life too, or stunts it? Well, yeah, that's like all that's explored in the first 10 minutes of the film, where they're at the kitchen table with the button. Beyond that, there's nothing here. So if you want to give this 4 stars for just the opening premise that we derail shortly into the movie, then fine, it's 4 stars just for the opening premise. I'm not even sure why this, look at this marketing, look at this, this Box 2009 up here at the top of this page with Cameron Diaz front and center. What's the purpose of having a red streak across her face like that? I just don't know. Again, this is marketing from the film. This isn't something that was just made up on Rotten Tomatoes. That's the box cover there, right? So, or the poster. What's the purpose of that? What is the... I don't even get the poster, what the poster is supposed to tell us. There's a red streak across her face. Does that mean like she's the guilty one? She committed the sin by pushing the button? That's the only thing I can see here. Again, it's just confusing. Everything about this is confusing, not the plot. So if people out there saying, oh, you couldn't follow the plot because it was too complicated for you, it went over your head. No, it didn't go over my head. The plot was very simple and cliched. It's just like, what was all the other weird stuff supposed to mean? What was the point of the whole thing? There was no point. And with that, I'm going to say this has an audience score of 24%. That's fair. It could sink to 10%. It would still be fair because what did I watch? I don't know. And so I will see you again on the next episode of Rotten Reviews.